Hey, welcome to the Knowledge Exchange UK webinar on national security, responsibilities, risks and collaboration. I'm very grateful that Chitali has joined us from the newly renamed HRSA. As an organisation which renamed itself 2 years ago, we can know the challenges of the previously known as HECA, now known as HRSA, the Higher Education Research Security Association. And we're also joined by Matt from the National Protective Security Authority, I think I'm going to say, and Matt will chip in. Matt is going to keep himself off camera. Thank you, Matt. Keep himself off camera for security reasons. So it's not that you can't see him, that's by design rather than anything else. And we also have Rosemary Boyle joining us too, who's available to answer questions. So Rosemary's just put her hand up on chat so you can see her. Chitali works in Bristol. Rosemary's worked in Cambridge in a number of different roles. And obviously this issue has come about and has been touched on through research. And what we're hoping to do in this seminar is think about the commercialization considerations around these kind of issues. So Chitali, Rosemary and Matt will help us with that. The way I think this is going to work is Chitali will do a presentation, then Matt will do a presentation, and then we have some chance for Q&A at the end. I hope that's what everybody's expecting. If not, I'm going to turn my camera off and encourage Chitali to introduce herself and to load up her slides, and we'll get going.
Thanks very much, Stuart. As you've explained, I'm Chitali Desai. I'm the Head of Research Compliance at the University of Bristol, but I'm here today to talk about HRSA, the Higher Education Research Security Association. So I do have a set of slides that I'm going to now aim to share with you, if that works. No, I'm sharing the wrong screen. Doing really well today already.
That's fine. This is common in this tech world. And changing between systems. So I'll let you know when you're sharing your slides. That is perfect. Thanks.
Great. And these slides can be shared after the session if that's helpful. So as I mentioned, we are the Higher Education Research Security Association. That's only very recently been rebranded. To just tell you a little bit about ourselves, it is a sector-led, institutionally agnostic association that was formed in 2021. So it's not aligned to any specific university. It's every university is welcome, as are members beyond university, the university framework. And it is all research security professionals that are at some very research intensive universities, but also some universities that aren't so research intensive and are just coming into this new area. It's entirely voluntary. We don't have direct funding. And like I said, we were formerly known as the Higher Education Export Control Association. The reason for the change in name has been that we've realized that there's best practice promotion that we've been trying to do that was export control driven, but the research security environment has evolved so much. So our role has evolved with it. And so the work that we do now spans that much broader research and economic security agenda. And then to reflect that, we've rebranded ourselves too. We aim to serve as a conduit for technical exchange between practitioners, so those of us at the coalface doing this kind of work day in, day out, and the regulators like ECJU and the Investment Screening Unit, the UK government, so NPSA, who are here today with us, and the DCIT, for example, and RCAT, and then other national and international stakeholders. That's through our participation at the Higher Education Security Forum that we make those links. But a lot of those national and international stakeholders also attend our conference that will be happening later this year, and we do that conference every year. So there's the opportunity in all of these sessions and all of these opportunities that we have to meet people all over the world that are grappling with the same problems that we are. The aim is to enable collaboration across the university sector, the higher education sector, so that there's a consistent approach to security compliance at that national level. The aim is that there are lots of universities that have different size teams that are at different positions along their journey grappling with this. And the aim that we are able to facilitate a kind of leveling up, that it doesn't matter how big or small your team is, or how big or small your research programs are, that there is something here that we can support you with. We collaboratively develop guidance and training materials to address sector-specific challenges such as emerging technologies and changes to the NSIA sensitive sectors, as an example, and that allows universities to make informed decisions on institutional compliance. Just a few elements of data there for you that you can see. What it generally says really is that we've grown a lot over the past, what would be 5 years now. So it was November 2021 that this organization came about. And I do recall going to the very first conference, which was in a room in London, and there can't have been more than maybe 50 or 60 people there. That's now evolved into a 2-day conference with at least 400 to 500 members that arrived from all over the country and all over the world. There's a point there about a 45% increase in registered conference delegates from 2024 to 2025. And I don't think that's anything like, better advertising or anything like that. It's just a recognition that there's so many universities and research institutes that are alive to the issues that we talk about now, and they find the material that we provide really useful, and that networking element, they find that really useful as well. So I think that's reflected in the growth that's seen in these data points. So we have a monthly membership newsletter, and that contains a lot of useful information, such as developments in regulation or information that's come to us from sector bodies, sort of updates from them. And there's some vacancies information in there too. There is the particular highlights about what's happening in the sector and what are the things to be alive to in the following month. We also, we've recently updated the website, which contains a lot of sector developed resources and tools and guidance. It will also inform you of invitations to specific workshops, training and events that we run all throughout the year. There is the online Higher Education Strategic Export Controls course that also sits on the website. That is the first free online strategic export controls e-learning course. And we do, actually, and I will speak about it later, we will be expanding that catalogue of what we can offer as well. Effectively, it's just an opportunity to engage in both focused subgroups that deal with specific elements of subjects that are important to an audience, and also those wider, broader remit sector challenges. Again, some more interesting data. If you want to have a look through that, again, like I said, I'll share the slides, but it just is another recognition of how wide the HRSA footprint has become in the past years, and the benefit to members that join us at our events or read our newsletters or engage in those activities that we run is the availability of this entire panel of people, or a group of people, I should say, that are so widely represented across the world. The 4th annual conference, which was in Milton Keynes last year, as it says, we had 180 plus delegates and 125 organisations. I think we intend to surpass that significantly this year. And there is detail on here about what the details are for the forthcoming conference in June in 2025. Additionally, more guidance that we offer there is just some information. You'll find it on the website. Some UK Strategic Export Controls guidance notes, the e-learning course. We have the NSIA tools as well, some regulatory guidance and trigger event tables as an example, some information on US export controls, and all of this really leads on to events that we aim to hold, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. But this is just some information about the kind of uptake there is to that Strategic Export Controls e-learning course. And as you'll see, there's a whole raft of different users that find it really useful to engage in that. And a lot of universities have been able to take the approach where they've said everybody in their university is signed up to be able to do this course and they can access it directly. Some have taken the view that they import the material effectively onto their own training platforms and can then use the same material that HRSA has provided to make sure that there is a platform available to their academics and their professional services colleagues right there on a university training platform to give them the information that they need. We are developing a similar trusted research e-learning course in collaboration with NPSA and NCSC that aims to go to pilot by next month. So we're hoping that very soon we'll have another course on the HRSA website that will allow you and your colleagues to have a free port of call where you can go and do a level of training to upskill you in areas that maybe some people are coming to anew, and also then to underline knowledge that people already have. There's a place you can go which will give you that in a kind of consistent and uniform format. The course is building on existing NPSA and NCSC materials. We've just incorporated that into a user-friendly e-learning module approach, so putting it all in one place, taken from various other resources to align with information that's out there, but to present it in a much more uniform format. As it says there, it's got a lot of practical guidance in there on safeguarding research, international collaborations, identifying and mitigating risks like foreign interference, the implementing due diligence processes. All of those are covered within that e-learning module, and we hope you'll take part in the pilot when it does go live. There's always ongoing resources that we are putting onto the website, and there's a lot of work that the Secretariat and our colleagues within the membership do to build those resources, and we hope you'll have a look through them and find some of them useful. Most recently, we had a very successful HRSA and ECJU export control 6-month training program. Owing to changes in the ECJU, whilst we would like to be able to run it again, it's a work in progress. We will keep people updated where we can, but it went very, very well in the sense that it was one of the first of its kind of a direct and focused 6-month training program where the cohort was the same every month, that there was a little bit more knowledge, a different topic that was tackled every single month. And at the end of it, there was a ceremony, I suppose you can call it, certificates and a sense of achievement, I hope, with the people that engaged in it, to say that they went through this course and it's actually supported them to be more effective in the roles that they have. The impact, as you can see, is the sector saving, the money that's spent on external training and other resources is taken away by using these HRSA resources. So where we hope to be able to run it again, of course, we will keep membership updated. And if we can, then I hope we will see a number of you there. I mentioned the subgroups a little earlier, and we've got 3 subgroups in play at the moment, and the intention is to sort of expand on that where we can. Firstly, we've got the security subgroup, and that's about enhancing practitioner awareness on the understanding of personnel security. We've done a lot of the work in that group with DSTL, Ministry of Defence, NPSA, and the National Physics Laboratory. There have been outputs that are already on the HMG website, and the link is on the slides for you to see if you want to go and have a look at that. You may already have seen them. They were released quite recently. The second subgroup is the Trusted Research Engagement and Training subgroup, known as the TREAT subgroup, and that is to support enhanced research security awareness and practice specifically within the academic community. We've done a lot of workshops and sort of stakeholder engagement where we've recognised that whilst we can try and engage with academics as much as possible, and we can feed training down to them as practitioners, we need them to be able to directly do a level of training and gain a level of knowledge so that they fully understand the decisions that we're talking to them about. And then the third one is an NSI subgroup, and that relates specifically to the National Security and Investment Act, and that's currently in formation. I think the terms of reference are currently being agreed, and the aim will be to focus on the sector's interaction with the Act, taking account of where there is consultation to change the sensitive sectors and how that will develop in the future, and then to explore future guidance and support needs as well there. Just a list there of who we're collaborating with. You'll see there's a lot of organisations and stakeholders in government, international peers, who many of you probably already you are aware of or you do collaborate with. But it's just a snapshot of what kind of awareness or what kind of awareness of HRSA there is across the board and who we're engaging with. And that has got bigger and bigger each year, and we hope it continues to expand. The annual conference that I mentioned, that is on the 3rd and 4th of June this year. Registration will be available from the 31st of March. And we've also got a few other activities in train. So there is the International Collaboration and Conference Exchange opportunity with Team Canada. The applications are out at the moment for people in the sector and beyond to be able to apply to attend the Canadian annual conference, their research security conference, and then delegates from Canada will also join us at our conference. The aim will be that there is that kind of cohesion across borders within those opportunities, but then delegates will speak at each other's conferences as well, so that we can hear from our counterparts all over the world and see how they are dealing with research security issues that we are too. There is also the US Export Controls course with EGAD in July, and then further work that we're doing with the Trusted Research Education and Innovation Security Hub that we're building on the HRSA website. So there's a lot going on that you'll see, and there's a lot of partnerships that we have with other groups that do similar work that we do, as well as those that are completely in the commercial sector, or those that provide us with tools to do due diligence. We've been able to build frameworks that allow us to partner with people like Dimensions and Caron, and then offer them to our members at a reduced price, sort of recognizing that the sector itself is kind of tightening its purse strings, and where we can support that kind of engagement with tools that are useful but do it at a beneficial rate, then we've worked to do that. And I think that's it in terms of my slides. I will stop sharing and then open the floor up for any questions, unless Stuart, you prefer for questions to follow later. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chitali, for that broad landscape of what's happening in the security area around research and commercialization, and particularly the resources and activities of HRSA under their new name. What I might do next is just encourage and invite Rosemary to speak about the kind of implications of that around commercialization, and then come to Matt just to sort of to finish off in the context of the National Protective Security Authority's views. So, Rosemary, if you want to load up your slides, we'll just sort of put that into the context of tech transfer, and then go to Matt, and then we'll take questions at the end around all of those topics. But do feel free to put any questions in the Q&A box in Teams, that we can manage them. But over to you, Rosemary, for just a little bit of putting that into the context of commercialization.
Okay, just checking. Can you see my slides?
I can, and you're not muted like I was, so you're doing great.
Okay, great. So this is, I'll take my watch off, so I do this within the 10 minutes. I just prepared this for Cambridge Enterprise recently, and that sort of proved very useful for them, so I'll do that. So what does the Act do? This is the thing that mainly affects tech transfer organisations. So it enables the Secretary of State to call in for review where there's a trigger event. I'm going to explain all this. It's an acquisition either of entities, either it's companies or other organisations, or rights to use or control assets in 17 identified technology areas. Rights to use or control, that means licence or assignment. Call-in can occur up to 5 years after a trigger event if the Secretary of State hasn't been notified. And I'll come on to when you have to and when it's voluntary. Unlike export control, its application is determined entirely by the technology being transacted, not its export. So even when there's not an export, transactions within the UK are within scope. So call-in will cause delay. So you might decide that you're going to notify, and then there'll be a process. On average, per statistics, the government took 27 to 28 working days following a notification to decide whether to call in. And if they call it in, then you have to provide more information, and 81 working days to issue clearance or a final order. So that's tricky if you're in a tech transfer situation and you've got investment pending. Or a license pending, because those delays can actually ruin the deal. So that's just something to sort of be aware of. So what is a trigger event raising the need to make a notification? Well, there are two types of trigger events: mandatory notification, and that's really share acquisition. And as I've said here, Cambridge Enterprise doesn't buy into established companies, so that's not really what we're concerned about. But it's triggered by acquiring more than 25% of shares or increasing the shareholding. And the responsibility for notification lies with the acquirer. And failure to notify is a criminal offence. So this is pretty serious. Also, the transaction is void. So if you've got a share acquisition, you have to really notify. Now, if it's not a share acquisition, if it's assets, and here we're talking about licenses or assignment, it's a choice, not an obligation. And the trigger is, as I've said, acquiring a right or increasing the right to use or control an asset. So what does that mean? Well, trigger events occur whenever a license or assignment of IP is given. This is the stuff of tech transfer. And a share transaction of more than 25%, also less than 25% can also be relevant, well, or the acquisition of material influence. But those things I've just put in that for completion, so for completeness. So what is useful for what the tech transfer entities need to think about is licenses or assignment. And of course, license or assignment also occurs in research agreements with collaborators. So all parties involved should consider making a notification. In fact, the consequences can be dealt with by contract drafting. And when I was part of the University of Cambridge and the Association of University Legal Practitioners, we did some drafting. So the problem is not a legal one, but there's high political interest. And politicians want to be in the NS agenda. Many departments are involved. I was part of the initial team that set up HECA, and also a parallel forum where we meet with government departments. So one sees quite how many departments are involved. So it's a question of reputation. This is really the key for voluntary notification, being and showing we are being good citizens. So if we have a technology which later turns up somewhere where it's embarrassing on the front page of the Daily Mail or whatever, if we have shared with government, then we have shown that we're good citizens, not just ignoring national security concerns. But this is choice. It's not a legal requirement. The legal consequences can be dealt with other ways. So what is an asset? So what are you talking about when you're licensing or assigning IP? What is the asset? Well, qualifying assets are laid out in Section 7 of the Act, and I've just put it up there. You can read it yourselves, but what is apparent is that it is very broad. It's not IP as such. It's not patents as such. So, you know, it's got a very broad scope, and that's the basic theme of the Act. It's broad. So, say we know we're licensing or assigning an asset. What next? Well, the 17 areas define the scope for mandatory and also voluntary notification. And the definition for voluntary notification is broader, because it says not just if it's within the defined areas, but if it's close to. So, you know, again, there's breadth here. It goes beyond dual use technology and covers much, I would say most, scientific research into emerging technology, and it's meant to fix that. So you have to check the regulations. They're very detailed, but very broad descriptions. The descriptions for advanced material includes paint. The description of synthetic bio is particularly difficult to apply. And we don't have much sense of what actually government is interested in. We have the RCAT, where we can go and ask for advice, and sometimes you will get an agreement that it's not very risky, but on the whole, we tend to take things that we are not sure about, and sometimes the guidance given cannot be very specific. It will just say, oh yes, there's a risk, so you probably should notify. Now, if it's dual use technology, so it's subject to export control, it's a civilian technology which can be used for military purposes, it's on the consolidated lists on export control, and then export of information is scope, but that doesn't remove, doing a voluntary notification doesn't remove the need to make an export license application if you are exporting. So you have to twin track if you're exporting the technology. And when we've talked to government officials about that, they say, well, do we need to put in an NSI notification if we're making an export control application? And they say, yes. So the impression is that it's broad. There are no safe areas, no safe harbours. Just because it's a UK company doesn't get you off the list. Say it's a very well-recognised UK investor, no, that doesn't get you off the problem either. So what are the areas? Well, here they are. There are 3 more areas in prospect and certain changes being made, but semiconductors have become quite an important area. So that's not been implemented at the moment. So this is the list for the moment. And each of these areas is supported by detailed regulations. And what ones look pretty nasty? Well, synthetic biology would seem to be a hot area. Quantum, is a bit of a hot area. Advanced materials, advanced robotics, AI, because AI can now be used for military purposes. So it's a very broad list, and it covers most of university research. So how does the drafting of the regs and the Secretary of State guidance help? Because there are regs, and also the Secretary of State has given guidance, which gives you some indication of when perhaps national security is an issue, and you should be really thinking about this. So the 17 areas are defined in the regulations. There's a statutory instrument, and there's the Act, and it gives you the details of the 17 types of notifiable acquisitions. They're technical descriptions you can discuss with ARCET. They tend not to give clearance. So how do we decide if an acquisition of an asset is something government would wish to see? Well, that's a bit tricky, because we don't know. And I've said to government officials that, yes, universities and tech transfer companies have to take their own view about the risk is and what their risk appetite is. But my own feeling is that if we knew something was really important to government, we would notify. So that's, but at the moment it's voluntary, and we very much emphasize that it needs to be voluntary. It needs to be a matter of collaboration, because this is tricky stuff, and it's not in the interests of the Investment Security Unit to be flooded with notifications from anxious universities and tech transfer offices. So that's a tricky thing. And hence the work that is being done by HRSA on trying to get some sort of handle on due diligence. It's something that we've been talking to government for the past 5 years. So we haven't made significant progress there, but one lives in hope. It's nationality agnostic. There's no concentration on certain companies or types of counterparties, but in conversation, officials will say, of course, China, its military fusion is a serious concern, and China is now subject to arms embargo, partial arms embargo. That brings it in with within the military end use question. So even if there's no export and you are providing assistance to something which is a military end use, then that's something that needs to be thought about in terms of export control. There's now more awareness of the Seven Suns. So these are actually defence universities. Cambridge Enterprise has a license to the ASPI tracker. This was initially produced by the Australians and was free. Now you have to pay for it. It's behind a paywall. So that's an important tool, but there are lots of things that are being developed. I mean, Shatterley mentioned Charon, which will track the antecedents of whatever company you're dealing with. And Dynamics is another tool. There are lots of due diligence tools out there, and HECA is doing its best. HRSA is doing its best to provide sensible access to that. Workload, that's the main thing. Making an application doesn't take huge amounts of time if you've done one before, but it takes time to find the information. And you can end up with scary letters that says, take notice that you're going to be in big trouble with government unless you reply to this. Don't be put off by the scary letters. They're written in order to trigger various provisions in the Act, which mean that the Investment Security Unit and Secretary of State can follow up if you don't provide the information. So that they're not scary, and there can be quite a lot of discussion. And it's changed quite a lot over the years. With our first, I think Cambridge Enterprise has made probably more voluntary notifications than anybody else in the country. I'm not sure, but I think we've made a lot. Some of ours have been called in, but none of them have been prohibited. So whether we're getting it right or not, maybe if we'd had some prohibited, it would show that we were, not wasting time. But we've had 2 called in. The first one, there was a lot of discussion about what the technology was, and there was ISU in the early days saying, well, we think it's this, and then we get our academics and they say, no, it's not that. And then they say, well, we think it's this. No, it's not that either. Well, we think it's this. No, it's not that either. But we've now found that the questions are much more searching, and they're about mitigations, and it can take several days to prepare the answers. So that is a question that, you know, we really need to think about with government, whether we can filter down to the things that they're really interested in and find a quicker way of dealing with it. Should we notify of not exporting but on the dual use list? Not on the dual use list, sorry, not on the dual use list. I think we have taken the view that we might not need to. So I'm going to be a bit vague now because I've forgotten what the point was behind that. So anyway, that's a very quick run through. I think I'm still within my 10 minutes. I'm very happy to help with any questions because that's what I was asked to be on this panel for. And I've written some of the guidance materials on the HRSA website, particularly how do you look at different types of trigger events in the context of higher education research and higher education tech transfer and the different processes. And we went through that initially with ISU just before the Act was brought into force. And we've been through it with them more recently and done a webinar with them. So as far as we know, that is a reasonably good guide to when there is a trigger event and what you need to do. Okay.
Thank you, Rosemary. I always appreciate your insights on this and the work you've done with it over years.